Day Morning. I'm Sarah Colvin, and joining me live on the phone, I welcome Cape and Island State Senator Dan Wolf. Dan, good morning.
Good morning, Sarah. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. How are you?
I'm doing great.
So wanted to talk a little bit about income equality. I understand that earlier this month the Senate hosted kind of an informational briefing on that topic. Of course, that's something that we've been hearing a great deal about lately. Tell me a little bit about the impetus for putting together this informational forum.
Well, the impetus is that I think a lot of people are looking at unemployment figures, looking at the Dow Jones Industrial Average, looking at a lot of macro indicators that we've depended on in the past to tell us whether the economy is healthy. And by those measures, the economy looks like it's getting healthier and healthier. But I think for anybody either running a small business or in the middle class right now, everybody would agree that there are some thing here. Let's put it that way, that this recovery has helped some people, but has not really helped middle-class families struggling and small businesses that are struggling. So we've really looked at why that's happening at the State House and sort of arrived at the idea that that it is because of the inequality. Even though the economy is producing more, that prosperity is not really distributing itself in such a way that most people are recognizing a healthier life. And anybody who's listening to this knows what I mean. Even if they've been fully employed through the recession of 2008, 2009, they're not really feeling this recovery. And if you look at the statistics there, the recovery itself, 95% of this recovery has gone to the top 1%, and 100% of this recovery has gone to the top 95%, which means that 95% of the people listening to this are no better off than they were in 2009. So that was really what it was about. How do we measure our economy, and how do we take steps to really address the burgeoning wealth and income inequality that's really holding most people back from reaching their aspirations and dreams?
Sure. So let's talk a little bit about potential solutions. What can be done? I mean, obviously, we can certainly see for the middle class, and really kind of very evident here on the Cape, where so many young families and single folks starting out are struggling because of the salary and housing gap here. But it's something that's kind of replicated all across the state and all across the country. So what kind of steps can be taken? What can be done to work with this income inequality and perhaps close the gap a little bit?
Well, let's take a bookmark, first of all, on the housing issue, because I'd love to do a show completely on that. I have some ideas on that specifically because we do have some unique characteristics of that problem here on the Cape. But in a macro sense, the way I like to talk about it is this can be solved, or it needs to be looked at from the bottom up, the middle out, and the top down. And I'll just very briefly, because I know you've only got a few minutes, go through what each of those are. From the bottom up, we have to make sure that those who are willing to work get closer to a livable wage, not just a minimum wage. So we took some steps in Massachusetts last year, as you know, to raise the minimum wage. I think we have to keep looking at that, because to the degree that we don't close that gap, even people who are working full-time, even families that have two income earners, are having to rely more and more on government programs, everything from housing to health care to food assistance, energy assistance. So the bottom up really is looking at wages and benefits that will help those who are working hard but still not able to make ends meet. The middle out in this case, that really means, and there's a lot of good discussion about this locally and nationally, middle out means really looking at where we should be investing and stimulating the economy to improve our infrastructure. We could create a lot of good jobs while building a bright future for our kids and grandkids if we would really take this opportunity to invest in infrastructure. And then middle out, I also talk to educational issues, early childhood education, continuing education, college education. So really growing the middle class from the middle out. And then top down, I think we're really got to talk about our tax code. We have a 21st century economy now, which is way out of balance. And we have a tax code that is just irrelevant to the way the economy is structured. So if we have an economy that's gotten as top heavy as this one has, we have to have a tax code that gets top heavy as well. So we need to take pressure off small businesses, middle class families relative to taxes, and we need to appropriately drive revenue from those who, over the past 20, 30 years, but especially over the last 6 or 7, has really prospered. So again, the plan is from the bottom up, from the middle out, from the top down, This economy can be saved. It can be fixed. There's plenty of prosperity being created. But because of the way this prosperity is not being shared, most of the people in it are not benefiting from the growth.
Well, and you mentioned, when we're talking about the middle class, we mentioned education, and it made me think about the astronomical cost of higher education, which just seems to be growing. And it seems especially those in the middle class who scrimp and save, or perhaps get the student loans piled on, they're really at a disadvantage when they come out of school with that degree. And now even more people are looking for master's degrees or even higher education. So when you're looking at finding a job, is that going to be able to fund all the money that you invested in your education? And when are you going to be able to come out on top? It's frightening to me.
Well, the correlation between good livable wage jobs and education is just a direct correlation. So we do know that allowing people to get an affordable education is really the first step in a career and a life of being able to live that American dream. Now, in 1984, if you went to UMass Amherst, room, board, and tuition was $3,800, and you could come down to the Cape, work for the summer, put yourself through a year at UMass Amherst, graduate 4 years with no debt. Now a year at UMass Amherst for an in-state person is about $26,000. And when you talk about debt that's crippling, that step into the adult world and those first jobs, it's really true what you're saying. So we need to focus on higher education. It's not all about revenue and paying. It's looking at how we're spending money in higher education. Administrative burden there has grown significantly. We have to look at the wages that are being paid at the top end, and we have to run our school system efficiently. That having been said, we also need to make it affordable because that really is the key to class mobility in this society.
Absolutely. And let's talk a little bit about the changes to the tax code, too, because obviously that seems like that would make a huge difference. But to me, knowing, the way in which all those structures work, seems like it may be close to an impossible task to get some of the taxes changed, at least the way that you would like to see them changed.
Well, we need a graduated income tax. It is absurd in Massachusetts to have a tax code where people making more than $500,000 a year are paying a lower rate than those making less than $75,000 a year. It's absurd. There's not a single listener that could defend that. So the first thing would be to make it fair. The second thing, as I said earlier, Sarah, would be to understand that historically, during times in this country where the economy is as out of balance as it is now, we have seen much more exaggerated, graduated, and progressive taxes. As you know, in the late 1950s, for example, the top incremental graduated tax rate nationally was 91%. People don't believe that when I say it, so go to the internet and look. Under the Eisenhower administration, the top incremental tax rate now is 39%. So that when you have the staggering out of balance that this economy is, and yet you don't have the political will to actually address it with progressive revenue policies, you're going to end up just seeing an economy which gets more and more out of whack. So we need to have a graduated income tax, both at a state level and probably more so at a federal level. We need to relook at capital gains and other taxes with a means test so it doesn't affect the people in the middle class that you and I were discussing. But we really need to look at those tools that we have available to us that will address an economy that has gotten so completely out of balance and try to rebalance it in a way so that it works better for more people.
So if nothing changes, if we continue along the track that we are in now with the income equality or inequality rather that we're seeing now, well, what are your concerns about the future? What would the future look like, if you can bring out your crystal ball, if nothing is to change?
Yeah, it's sort of like the Christmas carol of our economy. If we do nothing, what does the future look like? And if we do something, what does it look like? If we do nothing, you will see more and more people that need more and more assistance from our government to stay in their home, to be able to heat their home, eat healthy food, get health care, et cetera, et cetera. If we want people to be self-sufficient, we have to do something. So if we don't, there will be more and more people in need, more and more working poor, more and more families that are working 2, 3, 4 jobs just to try to make ends meet and blaming themselves for not being able to get there. That's what that economy looks like. It looks like more gated communities where those who have are able to insulate themselves from everybody else, and those who don't have are struggling harder and harder just to keep their head above water. That's unfortunately what it looks like. Education that becomes less available to those in the middle and at the bottom so that they can't really chase the American dream that really is the foundation of bedrock of this country. It's not a pretty picture if we don't do anything. On the other hand, the beauty of it is, Sarah, that this country, productivity has more than doubled since the early 1980s, which means that we have the prosperity to build a really bright future. Collectively, as far as how we treat infrastructure, how we treat education, and then individually, allowing those families to be self-sufficient, to have jobs that actually allow them to earn enough to live and to invest in future generations. So you really have, a tale of the bad and the ugly if we do nothing. But the opportunity that we have, if we really put our minds to it and have the political will, are staggeringly beautiful. So I certainly hope that's the direction that we go.
Absolutely, and I have saved that bookmark, Dan, on our conversation on housing. I think I would love to talk with you about your thoughts and ideas on housing moving forward. But I thank you so much, as always, for joining us today. It's a pleasure to have you on our program.
Always a pleasure, and housing's right at the right in the wheelhouse here of what we were talking about this morning. So I look forward to that discussion as well. Have a great day.
As do I. Thank you so much, Senator.
Take care.
Bye-bye. Cape and Island State Senator Dan Wolf, of course, joining us as he does every other Tuesday. Really looking forward to that discussion on housing. More to come on BTM. Dan Santos, our Director of Public Works, is next. But first, let's